The Greek island glow is honestly one of the most epic sailings I've ever done, and in today's video I'm going to make sure that I tell you everything that you're going to need to know in order to make sure that this odyssey is one to remember. You don't want to miss it. Welcome back to our next adventure with me, Jason, and yes, we're going to dive straight into the Greek island glow and everything that I think you'll need to know, including, of course, to begin with, an overview of the sailing, so you have a rough idea of what you're about to potentially get into. So, without further ado, let's begin. Now, just to make sure we manage expectations, when they usually like to market this sort of sailing, they always like to mention that it leaves from Athens. But when they say Athens, they actually mean Athens. You see, Piraeus is not Athens, it's Athens. Okay, do you get the difference? I'll explain it. Athens, the main capital city of the Hellenic Republic, where you can go and see the splendors of the Acropolis, Hadrian's Library, and so much more. Not to mention they have some of the best cocktail bars in the world, is one thing. Whereas Piraeus, or Athens, is the port town that is just outside of Athens. So remember, we got to make a distinction between Athens and Athens. This cruise leaves from Athens. So the first port we're going to discuss is obviously Piraeus. Now let's talk about getting from the airport to the cruise port. There are several options available to you. All of them, by the way, are going to involve either a taxi or some e-hailing service. It just now depends on how you wish to try split the costs, etc. Number one is going to be a combination of a train and Uber or a taxi, etc. So what you would do is once you get to Athens International, you'll catch the train, which will take you probably to Syntagma Square in central Athens. From there, you'll make a switch and go from Syntagma to Piraeus. The reason you're going to need to use a taxi from the Piraeus stop to the actual cruise terminal is unfortunately because it's still quite a walk away, around 30 to 40 minutes. So that's why I recommend the moment you get there to use a taxi or an Uber, etc. Now, as far as maybe just using Uber or something from the airport straight to the cruise terminal, this would likely be what you end up using. Just be aware of the following. Number one, that the most commonly used app for e-hailing throughout the Hellenic Republic is actually something called Free Now and not Uber. However, in Athens, Uber is still a very viable and popular use, but it's just so that when you know and you get to the other islands, etc., that you rather have Free Now available instead of Uber because more people are likely going to be using that. Last but not least, you can just use a third-party logistics provider. So for example, I like to use Welcome Pickups. They have an app, very user-friendly, and they also have their website. They do charge quite a premium. Personally, I've never found myself using them and going, oh, I just paid way too much for that. Now, when it comes to places to stay before your cruise or after your cruise, I would strongly advise do not stay in Piraeus. There's just unfortunately nothing really to do there. I have nothing against the people there or the place itself, but for you as someone who's visiting, I just think, especially if it's your first time, you are much better served by staying somewhere in central Athens. You'll want to look for a place that's either near to the Acropolis, Syntagma Square, because it is the main station for the metro, and any other metro station that you can find. It just makes the real distance that you've got to travel much shorter. With all that out the way, let's begin by starting our odyssey, and we are going to go from Piraeus to the beautiful island of Santorini. Santorini is a tender port, meaning you're going to have to take a smaller little lifeboat, some other ship, from the cruise ship to the main port. Now that we've made it to the port of Santorini, I'm going to be discussing how we're going to get from there to one of the other two main cities, Ia and Phira. Ia, you can either take a bus from Phira, and I'm going to discuss that in a moment. Alternatively, another popular option is that you're going to catch a ferry boat or boat from the port of Santorini, and that's going to go around, which gives you some really lovely views of the Sardonic coast of Santorini, and then it's going to take you to the bottom of a hill in Ia, where usually there's a bus that is then part of your ticket that's going to come and pick you up and take you to the top. Most people take this as a one-way trip, and once they get there, they'll take a bus from Ia back to Phira. The other thing you could do, of course, is to then get to Phira and take a bus from Phira. To do that, let's first then discuss how we can get to Phira. There are essentially three very common ways of getting to Phira from the port. The more common one and strongly recommended, assuming there's not a crazy long line, is going to be the cable car. It's very quick, efficient, and is inexpensive if you do need to pay for it. I will make a note, on Virgin Voyages in the past, they have given you a return ticket free of charge, and they usually give this to you before you get on the tender boat, so just be aware of that. The other option is going to be to take this path, and it's quite a winding, long path going up the hill, and if you are going in the summer, it is going to be incredibly hot, and I wouldn't recommend doing this walkway in that heat, especially if you're going uphill. Going downhill is a different story and is a more comfortable option in that case, but it is also very slippery, so just be aware of that. The second thing you could do instead of walking is to use the donkeys. They do have donkeys there. You'll have to pay extra for that, and they will walk you up or down depending on which way you're coming. A side note, just because I have to say this out of good conscience, is that the animals don't seem to be very well treated, but that is going to be your choice as to whether or not you do make use of it. Just putting that out there. As I did in my previous deep dive, I'm going to recommend what I did that day. I went from the port up the cable car. From the cable car in Fira, I walked to the bus stop. You do need cash in order to use the buses in Santorini, so make sure you bring some. 20 to 30 euros should be more than enough, so have that on you. Took the bus from Fira to Ia. Once I got to Ia, I walked around, took all the photos that I wanted, saw all the sights and beautiful history that I wanted to see. Once you've done and you've seen everything you wanted to see and got all your lovely photos, etc., that you're going to post everywhere, get on the bus back, same place that you got dropped off, and head back to Fira. Then from there, I took the cable car back down, went to my excursion that I had organized through the service provider, and went straight to the volcanic hike. Did the hike, got some really cool photos there, and it was really interesting. The guide that was provided was incredibly knowledgeable, and the views you're going to get of Santorini and the surrounding areas are amazing. From there, got onto the boat took us to the springs, had a nice quick swim in the springs, which was really enjoyable, headed back to the port, didn't do anything through the ship, and instead of spending thousands of dollars, I spent, I think, maybe $50 or something like that. It was well worth every single penny. Now, before we move on to the next tip, if I could please ask you to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. You see, unfortunately, a lot of people watch my videos, but then they don't subscribe, and then they come and watch the next one, and they still forget to subscribe. So if you are one of those people, or you're new to the channel, I would greatly appreciate if you hit the subscribe button. If you found this video helpful so far, please hit the like button. Anyway, back to the video. Thanks. And now as the sun sets over stunning Santorini, we make our way to Rhodes. Now, the island of Rhodes is absolutely stunning and a fantastic place to visit, whether it's for a long trip or a cruise. Now, in this case, we're there for a cruise, so let's discuss what we can do there. First things first, it's very walkable, especially Old Town. So if you wanted to, you honestly could just get off the ship and head straight into Old Town and check all the incredible things there are to do there. Now, further away from Old Town is going to be Lindos, where the famous Acropolis of Lindos is. It's very beautiful. However, you either will need to get there through the ship, or organizing it yourself, or using Viator to get hold of a third-party excursion, which is probably going to be the better option if you intend on using an excursion option. So that is definitely something to consider. My personal recommendation on what I did that day is I got off the ship nice and early, went for a long walk. I think it was around 40 minutes plus to get to the Acropolis of Rhodes, walked around there, the Odeon. It was beautiful, and there's just so much there. It didn't cost you anything extra but the time to get there, and of course you can always just catch a taxi or some other option. Went back into Old Town, and once I was in Old Town, I checked out the synagogue, which was just mind-blowing and quite tragic really when you understand what took place there in terms of this once vibrant Sephardic Jewish community. Now, after that, I also went to Hippocrates Square. There's a monument to World War II there that's very beautiful. Then I went to the Archaeological Museum of Rhodes, which was just stunning and superb. After the Archaeological Museum of Rhodes, just a short walk away was the Palace of the Grand Master of the Knights of Rhodes, and again, just another beautiful museum, perfectly preserving a era long gone. After relishing our day in Rhodes, we make our way to Bodrum in Turkey. I kind of like to think of it that there are two sort of ways you can tackle Bodrum. One of the ways is you go on a more cultural and historic experience of Bodrum. The other is that you kind of go on a much more relaxed experience when it comes to Bodrum. So let's first discuss what you would be doing if you're going to take the more historical approach to Bodrum. You're probably going to be going to the very popular site of Ephesus. Now, the ancient ruins of Ephesus are loaded with history, so I strongly recommend you go read up about it, but it is home to one of the supposed 7 wonders of the ancient world, the Temple of Artemis. Now, whilst you're there, you're probably going to make a stop to the house of the Virgin Mary. I elected to rather have a more relaxing day by going on one of the boats that could take you to the Maldives of Bodrum. I think all in all this was something like around $28. So for a almost whole day thing, $28 including these beautiful views, taking the boat out and being able to snorkel or just swim in the stunning waters was just totally worth it. From Bodrum, we now make our way to the famous island of Mykonos. The moment we got off the tender, because for Virgin this was a tender port that dropped you right at the old port of Mykonos, I bought a ticket to the island of Delos. It is basically an island that is a museum of the ancient Greeks that lived in Delos. The ticket includes the ferry ride there, a guided tour, which is excellent and superb. I couldn't rate it any more highly. And again, you don't need to use the ship. You don't need to use a third party. It's all easily done there for you by the museum itself. I then came back to Mykonos, had dinner on the ship. And then after that, I went and explored the old town itself at night, which was really alive and awake. There were just tons of people hustling and bustling about. It really had a great energy to it. Plenty of places open if you wanted to grab a bite. Now, on the second day of my time in Mykonos, what I decided to do is then go and explore old town Mykonos, including the windmills, Little Venice. You can quite literally walk through the restaurants and go from the one side all the way to the other. Just make sure you don't get wet, or that if you do, you don't mind. And as all good things must come to an end, we say goodbye to Mykonos and make our way back to Piraeus. That brings us to the end of our Greek Odyssey on the Greek island glow. I hope you found this video helpful, useful, or at least entertaining. I'll see you next time. Cheers. Bye.